Well, while we're out here watching the archery today, we've had a chance to meet the top man for the whole of the games, and it's nice to see you getting around and seeing what's going on. But we're having a quick chat that we're thinking it's actually 30 years since this all began in the Isle of Man, and boy, who would have expected it to be still going and improving and getting bigger, would you say, every time?
No, that's true. It was a vision that really paid off. It was like a political initiative to start with in Isle of Man with this inter-island games where 12, 14 islands were like invited to have a game of sport to compete in Douglas and all over the island. I was lucky to be one of them. I went there to play volleyball, and it created a memory for life for me. We all knew when we left that island that this has to move on, this has to continue. And luckily at that time Guernsey took responsibility, because it's about taking responsibility for the next games and so on and so on. They took responsibility for the 1987 games, and after that Faroes followed, and now we're here, 16th games and 30 years later.
You actually had a problem maybe at one stage there were too many people who actually wanted to take part in the games? Have you ever had that? I mean, because each time there seems more interest from different places that want to feel and be involved.
We go around to the different. We are on the 11th now host island, and it has proved right to have it as much, to share it as much as possible, because the legacy within the islands, it's huge. Yeah. Take Isle of Man, when we competed in Isle of Man 1985 in Peel, the athletics for example, it was like in mud and grass. Compare that with the national stadium today, it's like day and night.
And the games are still incorporated, or whatever the word would be, in the Isle of Man. The base is the Isle of Man for this.
The head office is in Douglas, Isle of Man, and will always be. It's in the constitution. We will be there. What we do is that we always try to honor what has been, try to honor our history and build further from that. But we will never change the main office from Isle of Man. Isle of Man will forever be our birthplace.
So can this get too big, this event? I mean, does it get unwieldy to have so many people trying to be in an island, of course, at the same time? Does that not cause problems, making this thing almost too successful?
Not really. We are always conscious about this failure of success. We therefore changed a few years ago that we took away the bidding procedure where islands were competing towards each other, because it's easier to win the games the more sports you put on. Today we are having a sort of allocation procedure where we negotiate with islands where we perfectly well can have a game with less amount of competitors, giving even the smaller islands the opportunity to be there. For example, Bermuda last year, when they had the NatWest Island Games, seen to number of competitors, they were pretty small games. But seen to the impact in the media and on the member islands, it's probably were more than ever. One of the reasons was that football was pretty weak at that time. Many islands preferred not to send football teams, which was a shame, by the way. But still, when the football was gone, the other sports got more attraction and more attention, and they were like all over the place instead. So I don't really see the risk with having a smaller games. Yes, a few might be disappointed, but there will be new chances.
It's, as you said, the NatWest Island Games. That sponsor has been there, obviously very important, but with the times being harder, have you found it more difficult to get the backing and the sponsorship you need for this event?
Not so far. We'll always risk that. That will always happen. But our brand, our Friendly Games brand and our NatWest Island Games brand today, it is pretty strong. And we are doing something good for our islands. So seen as a community investment, I know that the NatWest are very pleased with what they've done. And they've helped us ever since 1999 to build up a stronger and better and more professional administration. And I do think that we have learned them quite a few things as well, about friendship, about bringing islands together, about the need for investing in things that are good in the long run.
Well, Jersey certainly seems to have pulled it together. Would you agree?
They have. They are probably the most professional organization so far within our games, and that comes quite naturally because they've learned from the others' mistakes, and that will always happen. We're constantly in a learning curve, which we should be. We should never be pleased and say this is the best it can be, and therefore I don't really like the phrase when you say that when one say that it's the biggest games ever, because size doesn't really matter when it comes to islands. It's about the skill and about being the best games ever. That's fine, but not the biggest.
You being in charge, you open the games and you end the games as such. Is that a tricky thing to get the wording and the sort of motivation and the thank yous right? Because obviously the next game's only 2 years away, and I'm sure that's already well advanced, isn't it?
It is in Gotland. The NatWest Island Games is quite far in advance already. Yeah. They know the sports. They will be starting taking bookings as soon as these games are over. What we have said is that the next games should never try to get attention from the one that we're dealing with right now. So the Gotland organizers, they are ready to start, but they won't start until we've closed these games.
And as for the Isle of Man, I know there was talk about getting it again, but I think it's going to go to Innismon, isn't it? How far ahead, in other words, would you be working to sort out who's getting the games?
We're reasonably sorted for like the coming 10-12 years.
Oh wow, that's fair.
There are a few blank spots.
Is the Isle of Man in there at all?
Isle of Man are for sure there.
Yeah.
For sure there. For example, there is a very interesting 40 years anniversary
yeah.
in 2025.
Should be there.
I will be there. It's, I'm not going to stop now, because when you get involved in this and you see all these shy youngsters coming into the opening ceremony, island per island, and when you see them come back for the closing ceremony where they march in sport by sport, you see that all these shyness is gone. They're suddenly friends. A few of them come with medals, a few of them don't, most of them don't, but they still become friends, and that's exactly what we want. We want them to come as islanders and leave as friends.